The knock came at sunset. 3 slow strikes against weathered wood. The kind of knock that doesn't demand. The kind that asks, maybe even begs. Sarah Callahan stood frozen at her kitchen window, her hands still wet from washing dishes that hadn't been clean in months. Out here, 40 miles from the nearest town, knocks didn't happen. Not anymore. Not since the fever took William 8 months ago and left her with 600 acres of dying land and a heart too broken to care. She reached for the shotgun above the door. The same shotgun her husband had taught her to use. The same one she'd aimed at 3 different men who came sniffing around, thinking a widow meant easy pickings. But when she pulled back the curtain and peered through the dust-caked glass, she didn't see a threat. She saw a man, tall, weathered, hat pulled low against the dying sun, shoulders that carried weight far heavier than muscle and bone. And beside him, holding his calloused hand with fingers so small they disappeared inside his grip, a little girl. Couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Dirt on her face, dress torn at the hem. But her eyes, God, her eyes. They were the bluest things Sarah had seen since the summer sky stopped meaning anything to her. The man knocked again, softer this time, almost apologetic. "Ma'am." His voice was rough gravel wrapped in exhaustion. "I was told you need a rancher." Sarah's finger hovered over the trigger, but she couldn't stop staring at that little girl, at the way she pressed herself against her father's leg like he was the only solid thing left in her world. What happened next would change everything, for both of them, in ways neither could have imagined. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments. I'm sending love your way, wherever you are. Now let's go back to that dusty porch. Back to the moment 2 broken worlds collided. And back to a secret that little girl carried without even knowing it. Sarah didn't lower the shotgun. 8 months alone had taught her that mercy was expensive. Out here, on the edge of nowhere, you paid for kindness with blood. She'd buried her husband, fought off drifters, watched her cattle thin to bones while the bank sent letters she stopped reading. She wasn't about to trust a stranger just because he brought a child. "Who told you I need a rancher?" Her voice came out harder than she intended, rusty from weeks of talking only to herself. The man didn't flinch. He removed his hat slowly, holding it against his chest like he was entering a church. His hair was dark, streaked with early gray at the temples. His face told a story of sun and wind and something worse. Something that lived behind his eyes like a caged animal. "Tom Wheeler, over at the general store in Miller's Crossing. Said you lost your husband. Said the ranch was going under." He paused. "Said you might need help." Sarah's jaw tightened. Tom Wheeler talked too much. Always had. But he wasn't wrong. The ranch was going under. 3 fences down. Half the herd wandered off or died. The well pump needed fixing, and she couldn't afford a mechanic. Every morning, she woke up wondering if this was the day she'd just walk into the desert and let it take her. But she'd never admit that to a stranger. "I don't need charity," she said. "I'm not offering charity." The man's voice held no edge, no challenge, just plain truth. "I'm looking for work, real work. I can fix fences, tend cattle, repair anything that's broken. I'll sleep in the barn. Won't ask for much. Just meals and whatever wage you can spare." "And her." Sarah nodded toward the little girl, who had pressed her face into her father's leg to hide from the stranger's harsh voice. Something shifted in the man's face, a softness that cracked through his weathered exterior like sunlight through storm clouds. "Her name's Emma. She goes where I go." "That's not negotiable." Sarah studied him. The worn boots, the patched jacket, the way his hand rested protectively on his daughter's head, fingers gentle despite their roughness. This wasn't a man looking for trouble. This was a man running from something. She recognized the look. She'd worn it herself after William died. "What's your name?" "Elijah. Elijah Cole." She let the name sit in the air, rolled it around in her mind. It sounded like someone else's name, like he'd borrowed it from a different life. "Where you coming from, Elijah Cole?" He hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but Sarah caught it. East, he said. Nevada mostly. Some work in Arizona before that. And before that? His jaw tightened. Does it matter? Sarah considered the question. Out here, the past was currency. You traded secrets like supplies. But sometimes the past was also poison. A slow drip that infected everything it touched. It matters if you're bringing trouble to my door. No trouble. His voice was firm now. Certain. I'm just a man trying to give his daughter something better than dirt roads and empty bellies. The little girl, Emma, finally lifted her face from her father's leg. She looked up at Sarah with those impossible blue eyes. No fear in them now, just curiosity. The open, honest curiosity that only children could carry. Are you the lady who needs help? Emma asked. Her voice was small and sweet, like a bell that hadn't been rung in years. Sarah felt something crack in her chest. Something she'd kept sealed shut since the day she shoveled dirt onto William's coffin and promised herself she'd never let anyone close again. I don't know, Sarah heard herself say. Maybe. Emma smiled. A small, careful smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Like she'd learned that smiles were dangerous if given too freely. My daddy fixes everything, Emma said. He fixed my dolly when her arm fell off, and he fixed a wagon wheel with just a rope and a rock. Sarah glanced at Elijah. He wasn't looking at her. He was watching his daughter with an expression that broke her heart in places she didn't know still existed. Pure, desperate love. The kind that would walk through fire. The kind that would lie, steal, maybe even kill, if it meant keeping that little girl safe. Sarah lowered the shotgun. There's a room in the barn, she said. Hayloft's got a mattress. Nothing fancy, but it's dry. You start tomorrow. Dawn. If your work's good, you stay. If it's not, it'll be good. Elijah placed his hat back on his head. Thank you, Mrs. Callahan. Sarah Callahan. Thank you, Mrs. Callahan. He turned to lead Emma toward the barn, but Sarah called out before she could stop herself. Elijah. He looked back over his shoulder. That girl, Sarah said. She looks like she hasn't had a proper meal in days. Elijah's face darkened with shame he couldn't quite hide. She'll eat tomorrow. I'll work for it. She'll eat tonight. Sarah's voice left no room for argument. Both of you. Supper's in an hour. Something flickered in Elijah's eyes. Gratitude, maybe, or something deeper. Something that looked almost like hope. Yes, ma'am. He walked away, Emma's tiny hand still wrapped in his. And Sarah watched them go, watched their silhouettes fade against the orange blaze of the dying sun, and wondered what in God's name she had just invited into her life. She didn't know it then, couldn't possibly have known. But by the time she found out the truth about that little girl, everything would be different, and nothing would ever be the same again. 3 days passed. 3 days of watching Elijah Cole work from sunrise to sunset without complaint. 3 days of seeing him tear through chores that would have taken her weeks. He moved like a man possessed, fixing fences, clearing dead brush, repairing the pump that had been broken since spring. He worked like he was trying to outrun something. Sarah kept her distance. She'd bring water out to the fields, leave it on a post, and walk away before he could start a conversation. She'd watch him from the kitchen window while pretending to focus on other things. And every night, she'd prepare 3 plates of food instead of 1, even though she still ate alone at the table where William used to sit. But Emma was everywhere. The girl had discovered that the ranch was a kingdom of wonders. She'd run through the fields with her arms spread wide, chasing grasshoppers and butterflies. She'd talk to the chickens like they were old friends. She'd sit on the porch steps and count the stars until she fell asleep and Elijah carried her to the barn. Sarah tried to ignore her, tried to keep that wall up between herself and anything soft, anything vulnerable, anything that might remind her of what she'd lost. She failed. On the 4th morning, Emma appeared at the kitchen door while Sarah was kneading bread. The girl's face was serious, her blue eyes fixed on Sarah with an intensity that seemed too large for such a small body. Can I help? Sarah's hands stopped moving in the dough. Help? My mama used to let me help make bread. Emma stepped inside without waiting for permission. I'm real good at punching it down. The words hit Sarah like a fist to the sternum. My mama. Past tense. Sarah looked at this little girl, her tangled hair, her dirt-smudged dress, the way she was already rolling up her sleeves like she'd done this 1,000 times before, and she saw something familiar. She saw herself, 30 years ago, standing in her own mother's kitchen, begging to be useful because being useful meant being loved. All right, Sarah said before she could think better of it. Wash your hands first. Pumps out back. Emma grinned so wide her whole face changed. She became someone else in that moment. Not a haunted child running from shadows, but a little girl who still believed the world could be kind. She ran out, washed her hands, ran back, and climbed onto the stool Sarah set out for her. And for the next hour, they made bread together. Sarah taught her how to knead properly, how to feel when the dough was ready. Emma told her about her dolly, named Rosie, and her favorite color, purple, and the horse she wanted someday if her daddy ever stopped moving around so much. Sarah listened. She listened more than she had listened to anyone in 8 months. And something started to thaw. That night, Sarah broke her own rule. She carried supper out to the barn instead of leaving it on the porch. Found Elijah sitting on a hay bale, carving something small from a piece of wood. Emma was already asleep in the loft, her breathing soft and rhythmic. Brought your supper, Sarah said, setting the plate down beside him. Elijah looked up. Surprise flickered across his weathered features. You didn't have to. I know. She didn't move to leave. Instead, she leaned against the barn wall, arms crossed. What are you making? He held up the carving. It was a horse. Rough still, but the shape was clear. For Emma. She's been asking for one. You're good with your hands. Had a lot of practice. He returned to the carving, the knife moving in small, precise strokes. My father was a carpenter. Taught me before I was old enough to remember learning. Where is he now? Dead. Long time ago. The word sat between them. Dead. Such a small word for such a permanent thing. I'm sorry. Elijah shrugged. Everyone's father dies eventually. Some just die sooner. Sarah studied him in the lamplight. The shadows under his eyes. The way his shoulders curved inward like he was protecting something inside his chest. What happened to Emma's mother? The knife stopped. The silence stretched so long that Sarah thought she'd crossed a line. But then Elijah set the carving down and looked at her with eyes that held more pain than any man should have to carry. She died. 2 years ago. How? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn photograph. Handed it to Sarah without a word. The woman in the picture was beautiful. Dark hair, kind eyes, a smile that looked like it came easy. She was holding baby Emma in her arms, both of them glowing with the kind of happiness that photographs couldn't fake. Her name was Catherine, Elijah said. She got sick. Doctor couldn't figure out what it was. She was gone in 3 weeks. Sarah handed the photograph back. Her throat was tight. I'm sorry. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. Elijah tucked the photograph away. Emma doesn't remember her much. Just pieces. A song she used to sing. The way she smelled. But it's fading. Every day, it fades a little more. Sarah understood that particular agony. The terror of forgetting. Of losing someone twice, first to death, then to time. What did she smell like? Elijah blinked, surprised by the question. Lavender, he said finally. She had this soap she ordered special from San Francisco. Couldn't afford it, but she'd save pennies for months just to buy a single bar. Said it made her feel like a lady. Sarah smiled despite herself. She sounds like a good woman. She was. Elijah's voice cracked on the word. She was the best part of everything. They sat in silence after that. Not uncomfortable. Just two people sharing the same wound without having to explain it. Finally, Sarah pushed off the wall. Tomorrow, she said, Emma can help me in the kitchen again, if that's all right with you. Elijah looked up at her. Something in his face softened. She'd like that. She needs... He stopped, shook his head. She needs someone gentle in her life. It's been hard for her. moving around so much, never staying long enough to make friends. Why do you keep moving? The softness vanished. A shutter came down behind his eyes, blocking whatever truth had been threatening to spill out. Just the way things are. Sarah knew she wouldn't get more than that. Not tonight. Good night, Elijah. Good night, Mrs. Callahan. She was almost to the barn door when his voice stopped her. Sarah, she turned. Thank you for being kind to her. She doesn't trust easy anymore. But she trusts you. The words wrapped around Sarah's heart and squeezed. She's a good girl, Sarah said. She deserves kindness. She walked back to the house with moonlight painting silver across the fields. And for the first time in 8 months, she didn't feel completely alone. But somewhere in the darkness beyond the ranch, watching from a ridge overlooking the valley, a man lowered his binoculars and smiled. He'd found them. 2 weeks became a month. The ranch transformed under Elijah's hands. Fences stood straight and strong. The pump worked better than it had in years. He'd brought back 3 head of cattle that had wandered into the canyons, tracking them through terrain that would have broken a lesser man. But it wasn't the ranch that changed most. It was Sarah. She started wearing color again. Just small things at first. A blue ribbon in her hair, a touch of the rose water she'd forgotten she owned. She caught herself humming while she cooked, found herself looking forward to mornings. And Emma had become her shadow. They baked together, planted a small garden behind the house. Sarah taught her to read from an old Bible that had belonged to her grandmother. Emma taught Sarah to see the world through curious eyes again, to notice the shapes in clouds, the songs of different birds, the way sunlight scattered through dust motes like tiny stars. It hurt. God, it hurt in ways Sarah hadn't anticipated. Because every time Emma laughed, every time those blue eyes sparkled with joy, Sarah was reminded of the children she never had. The ones she and William had tried for. The ones that never came. The family that was supposed to fill this house with noise and love. But the pain was different now. Less sharp. More like a bruise that only ached when you pressed it. One evening, Sarah found Emma sitting on the porch, knees pulled to her chest, watching the sunset with a strange sadness in her eyes. What's wrong, little one? Emma didn't answer at first. Then, in a voice so small it nearly disappeared into the wind, why do we have to keep running? Sarah lowered herself onto the step beside her. Running. Daddy says we're not running. He says we're just traveling. But we never stay anywhere. We never have a house. And every time I make a friend, we leave. Sarah's heart twisted. Where were you before here? Arizona. Then Nevada. Then some other places I don't remember. Emma picked at a splinter on the wooden step. Once we stayed with nice people on a farm. They had goats. I loved the goats. But then one night, Daddy woke me up real fast and said we had to go. We didn't even say goodbye. Did he tell you why? Emma shook her head. He never tells me why. He just says it's for my own good. Sarah wrapped an arm around the girl's thin shoulders. Emma leaned into her immediately, starving for the touch. Sometimes, Sarah said carefully, parents carry worries that children don't need to understand. They do hard things because they love us, even when those things hurt. Do you think we'll stay here? The question hung in the air, heavy with hope. Sarah wanted to say yes. She wanted to promise this little girl a home, a stable life, something she could count on. But she'd learned that promises were dangerous things. They broke too easily. I think, Sarah said, that your daddy is working very hard to give you the best life he can. And for now, you're here. You're safe. That's what matters. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up at Sarah with those impossible eyes. I wish you were my mama. The words hit Sarah like a thunderclap. Every wall she'd built, every barrier she'd raised, they crumbled in that single sentence. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. Oh, sweetheart. I'm sorry. Emma's face crumpled. Did I say something bad? No. Sarah pulled her close, breathing in the smell of hay and soap and childhood. No, baby. You said something beautiful. Later that night, after Emma had fallen asleep in the barn, Sarah sat on her front porch with a cup of cold coffee. The moon hung fat and white above the desert, casting everything in silver shadows. Footsteps approached. "Elijah, Emma asleep?" she asked without turning. "Yes, ma'am." He settled into the chair beside her. "She told me what she said to you." Sarah tensed. And I should probably apologize. She doesn't understand what her words can." "Don't." Sarah cut him off sharply. "Don't you dare apologize for that girl's heart." She spoke truth. "The truest thing I've heard in months." Elijah was silent for a moment. "You're good with her. Better than good. You're exactly what she needs. She needs a home, Elijah. She needs stability. She needs to know she won't wake up one night and have to run." He didn't respond, but his jaw tightened in a way that told Sarah she'd touched a nerve. "What are you running from?" "I'm not." "Don't." The word came out fierce. "I've watched you. The way you check the roads every morning. The way you never let Emma out of your sight for long. The way you startle at every strange noise. A man doesn't act like that unless he's running from something. Or someone." Elijah stood abruptly, walked to the porch railing, gripped it until his knuckles went white. "There are things," he said slowly, "that I can't tell you. For your own protection." "My protection?" "If you knew," he stopped, shook his head. "If you knew what was following us, you'd want us gone. And you'd be right to." Fear flickered in Sarah's chest, but she pushed it down. "I've survived a lot, Elijah. My husband's death. Drifters trying to steal my land. Loneliness that felt like drowning. You don't scare me." He turned to face her. The moonlight carved deep shadows into his features, making him look older, more haunted. "There are people looking for Emma," he said. "Dangerous people. And if they find her here, why would anyone be looking for a little girl?" Elijah's mouth opened, closed. He looked like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, trying to decide whether to jump. "Because," he said finally, "Emma isn't just my daughter." Sarah's blood went cold. "What do you mean?" Elijah looked back toward the barn where Emma slept, innocent of the storm gathering around her. "She's someone else's daughter too. Someone who will burn this whole territory to the ground to get her back." And before Sarah could ask another question, a sound cut through the night. Hoofbeats, distant but getting closer. Elijah's face went white. "They found us." Sarah was inside and reaching for the shotgun before her mind caught up with her body. "How many?" she demanded. Elijah had moved to the window, peering through the darkness with eyes trained by survival. His hand had found the revolver at his hip, fingers curled around the grip like they'd been born there. 3 riders, maybe 4, coming from the East Road. "Friends of yours." The look he gave her answered the question without words. "Take Emma," Sarah said. "There's a root cellar behind the smokehouse. Stone walls, heavy door. You can hide there." "I'm not hiding." "Then Emma is." "Sarah, this is my land." Her voice cut like a blade. "My home. I've defended it before and I'll defend it again. But I will not let that little girl be caught in the crossfire. So you take her, you put her somewhere safe, and then you come back and help me deal with whatever devil you brought to my door." Elijah hesitated for only a second. Then he nodded once, sharply, and disappeared toward the barn. Sarah checked the shotgun. Loaded. Ready. She'd fired it before, at the drifters who came sniffing, at the coyotes who went after her chickens. But she'd never fired it at a man with intent to kill. She had a feeling tonight might change that. The riders emerged from the darkness like ghosts made flesh. 4 of them, all on black horses that seemed bred for shadow. The leader rode slightly ahead, a tall man in a long duster, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. Even from a distance, Sarah could feel the menace radiating off him like heat from a forge. They stopped at the edge of her property, waited, patient as vultures. Sarah stepped onto the porch, shotgun leveled at the lead rider. "You're on private property," she called out. "State your business or leave." The leader chuckled, low and cold. "Mrs. Callahan, I presume." His voice was smooth, cultured, wrong for this rough country. The voice of a man who'd learned cruelty in drawing rooms and perfected it in back alleys. Who's asking? My name is Silas Crane. He touched the brim of his hat in a mockery of respect. And I'm looking for a man and a little girl. I have reason to believe they're here. No men here but ghosts. No children but the wind. Crane smiled. His teeth caught the moonlight. That's colorful. But we both know it's not true. Elijah Cole has been seen in the area. A rancher matching your description hired him 3 weeks ago. And where Elijah goes, the girl goes. You seem to know a lot about a man I've never met. I know everything about Elijah Cole. Crane's voice hardened. I know where he was born, where he went to school, where he married. And I know what he stole from my employer. What would that be? Crane leaned forward in his saddle. The girl, Emma. She doesn't belong to him. Sarah's grip tightened on the shotgun. Funny way to talk about a child. Like she's property. In a manner of speaking, she is. Crane straightened. Her mother was contracted to Mr. Josiah Blackwood. A business arrangement. When she died, the arrangement transferred to the child. Cole violated that arrangement when he ran. Contracted. The word tasted like poison. You mean owned? I mean, Crane said slowly, that Emma Blackwood is legally the property of her father. Her real father. And Cole took her without permission. The truth slammed into Sarah like a physical blow. Emma wasn't Elijah's daughter. She was someone else's child. Taken. Hidden. Protected from some monster who believed he had rights to her. Get off my land, Sarah said. Now. Crane sighed. I was hoping this would be civil. Mr. Blackwood is a reasonable man. He doesn't want violence. He just wants his daughter back. Surrender her, and no one has to die tonight. I said get off my land. Mrs. Callahan, Sarah fired. The shot tore through the air, close enough to Crane's horse to make it rear. The other riders reached for their weapons, but Crane held up a hand, stopping them. For a long moment he just stared at her. Then slowly he smiled again. Very well, if that's how you want to play it. He turned his horse, signaling to his men. They began to spread out, circling the property like wolves around a wounded deer. We'll be back, Mrs. Callahan, Crane called over his shoulder. And when we return, we won't be asking. We'll be taking. They vanished into the night, but their presence lingered, a stain on the air that wouldn't fade. Elijah emerged from the shadows behind the smokehouse, revolver still drawn. They're gone. For now. Sarah's hands were shaking. She willed them to stop. They said Emma isn't your daughter. Elijah's face went through a dozen emotions in half a second. Guilt, fear, shame, and beneath it all, a desperate, defiant love. She's not my blood, he admitted, but she's mine in every way that matters. Tell me the truth, all of it. Now. He looked toward the root cellar where Emma was hidden, then back at Sarah. Can we go inside? She can't hear this. They moved into the kitchen. Sarah lit a lamp, casting warm light over a world that suddenly felt cold and sharp. Elijah sat at the table, rubbed his face with rough hands. Catherine, Emma's mother, was my wife. But Emma wasn't born from our marriage. She was born before, to a man named Josiah Blackwood. The one Crane mentioned. Yes, Elijah's voice was heavy with hatred. Blackwood is a wealthy man, owns half of Nevada, mines, railroads, politicians. The kind of man who thinks money gives him the right to anything, including people. Catherine worked for him? She was his property. The word came out like broken glass. Blackwood bought her from her father when she was 16. A debt payment. She had no say. She was kept at his estate for 2 years before she managed to escape. Sarah felt sick. When I met her, she was hiding in Arizona, terrified, barely surviving. But she had Emma with her, this tiny baby who looked at me like I was the first kind face she'd ever seen. I fell in love with both of them. We married. I gave Emma my name, tried to give them both a new life. But Blackwood found you. He never stopped looking, Catherine was his, that's how he saw it. And Emma was his blood, his heir. He has no other children. The mines, the railroad, the entire empire. It all goes to Emma when he dies. Understanding crashed over Sarah like a cold wave. He doesn't want her back because he loves her. He doesn't know what love is. He wants her because she's an asset, a tool, something to mold into his image and use. Elijah's hands clenched into fists. When Catherine got sick, Blackwood's men found us. They'd been closing in for months. She died knowing they were coming. Her last words were, "Protect her. Promise me." So I ran. I've been running ever since. Sarah stared at the man before her. This stranger who had walked into her life carrying more weight than she'd ever imagined. 2 years, she said. You've been running for 2 years? Every town, every ranch, every place we stop, eventually they find us. I don't know how, but they always do. His voice cracked. I'm so tired, Sarah. I'm so damn tired. But I can't stop. If I stop, they take her. Sarah thought about the little girl hiding in the root cellar. The one who'd wished Sarah was her mama. The one who deserved laughter and stability and a future that didn't involve being sold like livestock to a monster. Then we don't let them take her, Sarah said. Elijah looked up. Hope flickered in his eyes. Fragile, disbelieving. You'd help us? After everything I've brought to your door. That girl needs protecting. You need someone in your corner. And I'm tired of being alone. Sarah's jaw set with determination she'd forgotten she possessed. This is my land, my home, and anyone who comes for that child will have to go through me first. Dawn broke gray and cold. Sarah hadn't slept. Neither had Elijah. They'd spent the night fortifying what they could, boarding windows, positioning furniture as barricades, counting ammunition. They had 37 shells between them, 2 firearms, and no backup coming. Miller's Crossing was 40 miles away. Even if someone rode for help at first light, reinforcements wouldn't arrive for at least 2 days. By then, Crane and his men would have made their move. We should run, Elijah said for the 5th time. He was pacing the kitchen, wound tight as a spring. I can take Emma. Disappear. You don't have to be part of this. And where would you go? Sarah's voice was calm, steady, the eye of her own storm. They found you here. They'll find you anywhere. Running hasn't worked. Maybe it's time to stop. Stopping means fighting. Fighting means killing. You ready for that? Sarah thought about William, about the life she'd built and lost, about the empty years stretching ahead if she did nothing, if she let fear win. I've been dead inside for 8 months, she said. Maybe it's time I started living again. Elijah stopped pacing, looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You're something else, Sarah Callahan. I'm a woman with nothing left to lose. That makes me dangerous. A small voice from the doorway made them both spin. Are the bad men coming back? Emma stood there, clutching her ragdoll Rosie. Her blue eyes were wide, but not panicked. She'd heard more than they realized. Elijah crossed to her in 3 strides, kneeling to meet her gaze. Everything's going to be okay, sweetheart. Daddy. Her voice was far too old for her years. You always say that, and then we have to run again. Elijah's face crumbled for just a moment. Then he forced strength back into his features. This time is different. Why? Because this time we're not alone. He looked back at Sarah. She stepped forward, knelt beside him, and took Emma's small hand in her own. Emma, I need you to be brave. Can you do that? Emma nodded solemnly. Those men want to take you to someone who doesn't love you the way your daddy does. The way I do. Sarah's voice caught, but she pushed through. But we're not going to let that happen. Whatever comes, you stay close. You trust us. And when we tell you to hide, you hide. Understand? Yes, ma'am. Good girl. The day passed in tense silence. Elijah taught Sarah how to reload quickly. She taught him the layout of the land. Every gully, every ridge, every hidden approach. They planned, prepared, prayed without admitting that's what they were doing. Emma stayed close, helping where she could, understanding more than any child should. Around midday, Sarah found her sitting by the garden they'd planted together, staring at the tiny green shoots pushing through the soil. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah asked, settling beside her. "My mama." Emma didn't look up. "Daddy says she's in heaven, watching over me." "I believe that's true. Do you think she knows? About the bad men? About us having to run all the time?" Sarah considered her answer carefully. "I think your mama knows everything, and I think she's proud of your daddy for protecting you, and proud of you for being so brave." "Were you brave when your husband died?" The question caught Sarah off guard. Children always knew exactly where to strike. "No," she admitted. "I wasn't brave at all. I was scared and sad and angry. For a long time, I couldn't even get out of bed." "But you're brave now." Sarah looked at this little girl, this child who had known nothing but uncertainty, yet still found the strength to hope. "I'm brave because of you," Sarah said. "Because someone has to be, and because being brave is the only way we win." Emma reached out and took Sarah's hand, held it tight. "I don't want to leave here," she whispered. "I want to stay, forever." Sarah pulled her close. "Then we'll fight to make that happen." Sunset came too quickly. Elijah spotted them first. Dust clouds on the eastern road, bigger than before. More riders. "How many?" Sarah asked, joining him at the window. "At least 10, maybe 12. Her stomach dropped. They'd been hoping for 4 again. Manageable odds. This changed everything. Blackwood must have sent reinforcements. Or he's here himself. The words hung in the air like poison. "Emma," Sarah called. "Root cellar. Now." The girl appeared instantly. She'd been ready, waiting for the command. She hugged Elijah tight, then hugged Sarah even tighter. "I love you," she whispered. Sarah kissed her forehead. "I love you too, little one. Now go. Stay hidden. Don't come out until we come for you." Emma ran. The cellar door slammed shut behind her. Silence. Sarah and Elijah stood side by side, watching the riders approach. "If this goes bad," Elijah began. "It won't. But if it does, it won't." Sarah's voice was steel. "That girl is not losing anyone else. Not tonight. Not ever." She raised the shotgun. Elijah drew his revolver, and the riders crested the hill. Silas Crane led the procession, but beside him rode a man who needed no introduction. Josiah Blackwood was everything his reputation promised. Tall, silver-haired, as like winter ice. He wore a tailored black suit that had no business in the desert, and he rode his horse like he owned the earth beneath it, because in his mind he did. "Mr. Cole," Blackwood's voice carried across the distance. Cultured, controlled, infinitely dangerous. "This farce has gone on long enough. Bring me my daughter, and I'll let you walk away. You and the woman." Elijah stepped forward, shielding Sarah with his body. "She's not your daughter. She's Catherine's. She always was. Catherine is dead. Her fantasies of escape died with her." Blackwood's lip curled. "I offered her everything. A life of luxury, status, purpose. She threw it away for what? A dirt farmer who couldn't protect her from a common illness. I loved her. Love." Blackwood laughed. A cold, hollow sound. "Love is what weak men tell themselves when they can't provide power. Emma doesn't need love. She needs structure, discipline, an empire to inherit. She needs a childhood," Sarah called out. "She needs to play in fields and read books and dream about horses. Not be molded into some tool for your dynasty." Blackwood's gaze shifted to her. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Interest, amusement, contempt. "The widow speaks. I've heard about you, Mrs. Callahan. The stubborn woman who wouldn't sell her dying ranch. I'll admit you've surprised me. I expected you to give them up the moment Crane explained the situation. You expected wrong. Clearly." Blackwood sighed, as if this entire confrontation was merely an inconvenience. "Very well. Crane, secure the property. And bring me the girl." The riders fanned out, moving to surround the house. "Stay behind me," Elijah said to Sarah. No. She stepped beside him. We fight together. The first shot came from Crane's direction, a warning that cracked the air and splintered wood from the porch railing. Elijah returned fire instantly. One of the riders fell from his horse, clutching his shoulder. And then everything became chaos. Gunfire erupted from all directions. Sarah fired the shotgun twice, hitting nothing but making the approaching riders scatter. She ducked behind the water trough as bullets thudded into the wood around her. Elijah moved like a man who had done this before, which she realized he probably had. He fired with precision, dropping 2 more men before they could breach the yard. But there were too many. For every rider that fell, 2 more pressed forward. They were closing in, tightening the circle, cutting off any hope of escape. A bullet grazed Sarah's arm. Pain flared, hot and sharp, but she ignored it, reloaded, kept firing. We can't hold them, she shouted. We have to. Elijah's voice was desperate. Just a little longer. She didn't know what he was waiting for. A miracle, maybe, the hand of God reaching down to smite their enemies. Instead, she got something else. Thunder. Not from the sky, from the earth. A rumble that grew louder, closer, until the ground itself seemed to shake. Riders appeared from the west. Dozens of them. Men in dust-covered clothes and worn hats, riding hard toward the ranch. What the... Elijah's face split into something like relief. Tom Wheeler, he breathed. That old man actually did it. Sarah stared as the riders poured into the yard, engaging Blackwood's men with a fury that turned the tide in seconds. She recognized some of them. Ranchers from the region, townsfolk from Miller's Crossing, men who'd been struggling against Blackwood's expansion for years. Tom Wheeler had rallied them, sent word while Sarah and Elijah had been preparing defenses. And they had come. The battle was brief after that. Blackwood's men, outnumbered and outflanked, began to fall or flee. Crane took a bullet to the leg and went down, cursing. Several of the black-clad riders threw up their hands in surrender. But Blackwood himself didn't flee. He dismounted, drew a pistol from his coat, and walked toward the smokehouse with murder in his eyes. He was going for Emma. Sarah saw it happening, screamed a warning. But Blackwood was faster, closer, and then Elijah was there. He tackled Blackwood from the side, sending them both crashing into the dirt. The pistol discharged wildly, hitting nothing. They struggled, grappling for control of the weapon. Blackwood was older, but he fought with the desperation of a man losing everything. His empire, his legacy, his control. She's mine, he screamed, spittle flying. Mine by right, by blood. You can't take what belongs to me. She doesn't belong to anyone. Elijah roared back. They rolled. Blackwood ended up on top, the pistol between them, barrel pressing against Elijah's chest. Sarah raised her shotgun, but she couldn't get a clear shot. If she fired now, she might hit Elijah. Let him go, she ordered. It's over. Your men are finished. You've lost. Blackwood laughed, a wild, broken sound. I don't lose. I never lose. I simply adjust my strategy. His finger tightened on the trigger, and then a small voice cut through the chaos. Daddy! Emma stood at the cellar entrance. She'd heard the fighting stop, thought it was safe. Blackwood's head snapped toward her. Something changed in his face. A flicker of recognition, possession, triumph. Emma! My Emma! Come here, child. Come to your father. Emma didn't move. She looked at the stranger with ice-cold eyes, at the man she'd never known, at the monster from her mother's nightmares. You're not my father, she said. Her voice was steady, certain. My father is the one you're hurting. And in that moment of distraction, Elijah moved. He twisted the gun. There was a struggle, a shot, and Josiah Blackwood fell. The dust settled slowly. Sarah ran to Elijah, helping him to his feet. He was breathing hard, blood from a dozen cuts staining his clothes, but he was alive. Emma broke free from her spot by the cellar and threw herself into his arms. He held her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. Blackwood lay motionless in the dirt, The bullet had found his chest. His eyes stared at nothing, his expression frozen in eternal surprise. Sarah looked at the body of the man who had caused so much pain. She expected to feel something, satisfaction, maybe relief. Instead, she felt only exhaustion. "Is it over?" Emma asked, her voice muffled against Elijah's shoulder. "Yes, sweetheart." Elijah kissed the top of her head. "It's over." The weeks that followed brought change. Crane and the surviving men were taken to Miller's Crossing for trial. Blackwood's empire crumbled without its patriarch, his business partners scrambling to distance themselves from his crimes, his political allies vanishing like morning mist. Tom Wheeler became something of a local legend, the old man who had rallied a territory against a tyrant. And Sarah's ranch thrived. Elijah stayed, not as a hired hand, but as a partner. He fixed what was broken, built what was needed, made the place stronger than it had ever been. Emma started school in town, riding there on a horse Elijah bought with his first real wages. She made friends, learned to laugh without looking over her shoulder, planted flowers in the garden she and Sarah had started. And one evening, as the three of them sat on the porch watching the sun sink below the horizon, Emma asked a question that had been waiting to be spoken. "Can I call you Mama now?" Sarah looked at Elijah. He nodded, eyes glistening. "Yes, sweetheart," Sarah whispered. "You can call me Mama." Emma smiled. A real smile, full and bright and unguarded. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Sarah Callahan felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Home. "So tell me, what would you have done in their place? Would you have risked everything for a stranger's child? Would you have stood and fought, or would you have run? Drop your answer in the comments below. I want to hear your story. And if this one touched your heart, stay with me. There are more tales waiting in the dust. More stories of courage, love, and redemption. Until next time, ride safe out there.